In life, I've realized it's not about what happens to any of us. We can't control that, but we can control our response to it. And so for me, I've always focused on my response, and sitting in anger, all that's doing is killing two people's. His life is done, and my life would be done as well from sitting in that anger for the rest of my life.
Hello.
What's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm excited. Let's do it.
Who do I have the pleasure of talking to?
This is Chris Singleton, man.
Chris Singleton.
Yes.
I feel like I should know who you are, and I really rather embarrassingly don't.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I figured your team might have had like a printout or something, but
They didn't tell you the concept of the show is that I don't know who I'm speaking to?
no, I had no idea.
That's the concept of the show. Like, I come on the podcast and I don't know who I'm speaking to until I show
Really?
up.
Oh man, that's pretty cool. Okay, I've never done that. That's pretty sweet. Okay. Well, yeah, man. I'm a young guy, husband, father, and I travel around about 150 days a year, speaking about love and unity. That's what I do. That's just that's my mantra, I guess.
Okay, that's so beautiful. What kind of inspired you to dedicate your life to love and unity?
Yeah, man. It was something very sad actually. I lost my mom in a very, very tragic way. It was a shooting at a church in Charleston, South Carolina, where I live. And this guy ultimately wanted to start a race war in this country. And it was a very, very publicly known mass shooting where a guy named Dylan Roof walked into my church and he took 9 lives during Bible study. And his goal was to like start a race war. That was his ultimate goal. And after I lost my mom, I told myself, you know what? I was playing baseball at the time, playing, drafted by the Cubs and stuff. But I said, I want to share this message, the opposite message of what he was trying to spread. And that's what I started to do. And, kind of like yourself, I got shared on a bunch of, media platforms, did the whole press run and some different shows. And now I get to spread love. That's what I do.
Wow, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, I remember that day. That was a terrible day.
Yeah.
But to be affected by it personally makes the word terrible just seem trite, to be honest. I mean, how did that moment affect you?
I mean, it changed everything. Changed my, up until this point, I was a college athlete. I was playing baseball, and that was my whole world, just to play sports. And when this happened to me, I ultimately had to take care of my little brother and my little sister, who were teenagers at the time as well. And so I grew up really, really quick when it happened. And of course, I was devastated by it, but I think for me, the biggest blessing that I found with what I went through was that now it gives me a purpose more than I had before. Before, it was just about baseball. It was about hopefully making it to the big leagues, playing sports professionally. And now I got this big mission of world peace, really.
So I'm going to ask you a difficult question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You hear when tragedy strikes, specifically at the hands of another, you hear those who can forgive and you hear those who cannot. And I wonder, where do you stand in respect to forgiveness?
Great question. I'm definitely on the forgiveness side of the spectrum. And the reason being is not because of my mother's killer. I haven't forgiven him because it lets his life be easier. I've forgiven him because it has freed me from needing revenge. I've forgiven him because now I don't have to hate all young white males after what happened to my mom. I've forgiven him because I wouldn't be able to speak about it if I hadn't forgiven him. So that's definitely where I stand when it comes to forgiveness versus unforgiveness. And it's been freeing for me. Now, does that mean it's all sunshine and rainbows? No, that's not the case by any means. But forgiveness has definitely allowed me to move forward in my life. And I'm intentional about saying moving forward, not moving on, because you don't move on from certain things. Not if there's very, very pivotal points in your life. You can move forward and say, yes, this was a turning moment in my life, but you don't move on from it. And so I've definitely moved forward because of forgiveness.
And how does one forgive? Like, how does one forgive? Like, it's easy to intellectualize it, right? But like,
Yeah.
how does one actually forgive? What is the process
Yeah,
within
I think
needing to
the
forgive?
yeah, great question. To start the process, I think we have to say it out loud. I think we have to use this powerful voice that we have. You know, there's a good book that says life and death is in the power of tongue. And so for me, I say to myself and I teach people, hey, I forgive whoever it is that wronged you. In my case, I forgive Dylan Roof for doing whatever they did to you or to your family, for murdering my mom and taking her life away. And then I say, because I know that forgiving him will allow me to be a better husband, a better father, a better human being, and I won't constantly need revenge, right? And so for me, I think the process of forgiveness is saying it out loud, number one, because I think there's power in that, but also figuring out what's on the other side of forgiveness for you. There's got to be a reward in it for you, the person that's going to do the forgiving. If there's no reward for me, then, why would I ever do it? There's no point in forgetting. It sounds good to do it, but if there's nothing in it for you, then why would I forgive the person that's wronged me if there's nothing in it for me? And for me, I know that I don't have to look at people that look like you and say, hey, I could never like this person because of the color of their skin. Unforgiveness might tell me, hey, I lost my mom due to racism, so now I'm going to be racist just like that person. That's what unforgiveness says. That's what it does to us. But for me, I say it out loud and then I figure out what's on the other side of forgiveness for me. And I think it's a journey in the sense of like, how do we know we're actually living forgiveness out? And for me, I realized that when I don't think about my mother's killer. I speak about my mom losing her life, all the time. It's the way that I keep her legacy alive, honestly. But I don't think about my mother's killer. I don't think about, where he's at or what he's thinking. And I think that's when I knew forgiveness was really festering in my soul and in my heart. When I realized that I've moved forward in my life. Um, Now, would I hope he apologizes one day? Do I need it? No, I don't need it, because forgiveness is like me putting my hand out for you to shake it, and if you don't shake it, I can go to bed at night because I tried. Whereas if I don't do so, then I might be beating myself up, saying, "Man, I probably should have gave it a shot." But that's what I think forgiveness looks like practically for me.
And did you ever have a moment or moments when, after this tragedy happened, when you were not forgiving?
That's a good question. I don't think I ever had moments where I was not forgiving, but I've had moments of pure anger, though, for sure. I've had moments I'm still upset to this day about losing my mom. Forgiveness doesn't mean that I don't believe you forgive and you forget either. I don't believe that's possible for something that pierced your soul. You can't forgive and forget. So I don't think there was any moments where there wasn't forgiveness, but I think there were moments of just being extremely upset and trying to figure out how I could stop this from happening in the future. And I have those moments to this day of still being upset about it and trying to figure out the solution to the hatred that we see in this world.
And I would imagine that part of your solution is to do the 150 days a year of spreading love and unity, the message of love and unity.
Yeah, the solution is me teaching what unity looks like. That's what fulfills me. That's what makes me feel like, man, it wasn't all for nothing. Because when you feel like something, when it's all for nothing, that's a very hopeless place to be. And I'm not there at all. I'm very optimistic. I've seen, people who have been this way for 6 decades change their heart, and that stuff keeps me going, spreading that message. Plus, my wife, my high school sweetheart, she gives me a rule of 150 days. So we kind of try to stay on the same page with that because I got 2 young kids and a beautiful bride. So that's why we got that number.
So Let me ask you another question. If someone has had something happen to them and they are not in a forgiving mood by any stretch of the imagination, how would you guide them to follow the path of forgiveness as opposed to following the path of revenge?
Yeah, I think first off, if they're in a good place, I wouldn't force them to try to forgive, right? So some people, they haven't forgiven and it's just festering at them and eating them alive, the pain that they've gone through, right? Those are the people that I think I want to help try to get to a place of forgiveness. But if a person hasn't forgiven, like in my case, my mom was lost, but there were eight other people that lost their lives, and there were eight other families that lost their loved ones. And not all nine families that lost a loved one forgave, right? And so some of us did, some of us didn't. And if they didn't, and their heart is in a place where they're okay, then I don't think they need to forgive. Who am I to tell them you need to forgive, right? My faith tells me that, but that might not be their faith. And I'm not going to force that on anybody. But if they're in a place where they're not sleeping well at night, they feel like they need to get revenge and they won't get it. The first thing is we have to be practical about it. You know, I think my mother's killers, I don't even know where he's being held at, to be honest with you. So there's no way I can get revenge there, right? And so practicality tells me, okay, I'm not going to be able to harm or hurt this person. So thinking that I will be able to will do nothing but harm myself and my family. And then we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, am I hurting the people around me by sitting with all of this anger and resentfulness and hatred? Am I hurting the people around me? Am I hurting my own life? And once we get there and we say we are, then I think we start the process of saying, hey, let me find out what's on the other side of forgiveness for me. Let me figure that out. So to the people that aren't struggling and they say, you know what, I haven't forgiven, but I'm in a great place. Who am I to force them to forgive? That's not, they're in a good place. But to those people that are saying, hey, I haven't forgiven, but I just don't feel right. Like I just feel off. I would say, first, make sure that people around you feel like, hey, after you've forgiven this person or forgiven yourself, they'll be in a better space. You'll be in a better space. You'll be a human being. And then figure out what's on the other side of forgiveness for you. For some people, they say, after I finally forgave my parent for doing this or doing that, or my grandparent, or whoever it may be, now I can live my life in a way that I can honor them for the first time. Whereas before, it's like I hated them so much that I wanted people to think, man, this person turned out terribly because of their parents. Now they say, you know what, I can live my life in a great way and honor them with my legacy because, I am their flesh. So I think there's different ways, but that's how I would guide somebody.
And how do you get someone from up in their minds to in their hearts? Because one can easily intellectually say, oh yeah, I'll forgive, or oh yeah, I won't forgive. But the real solution happens when you feel it in your body. And clearly you have had a transformation where you went from your mind to your heart, and everything you are saying to me shows to me that you feel that forgiveness inside you. Yeah. How do you get someone to actually understand that journey? Because it's intellectually, yeah, all right, then I get it from the mind to the heart. But how do you actually make them feel it? Because if you make them feel it, everything changes.
Yeah, I think it's tough to know how everybody's going to feel it the same. For me, I felt it when I didn't think about my mother's killer anymore. So it was still up here, but in my heart, I wasn't thinking about him anymore. So I knew that my heart had to change if I'm not thinking about it. So for the person that says, hey, I want to forgive, and they say these words and they're saying, how do I know it's in my heart? Do you have the same thoughts you had before? Right? Because I don't think we have a brain in our heart, but we feel sometimes like, man, I want to do this, but my stomach feels weird when I say I want to do it. Over time, if I look myself in the mirror every single day and I say, hey, I'm going to give it everything that I got today, and I promise myself that, and I do that over and over and over again, I'm still saying in the mirror, but there's something in my stomach that believes me by day 10 or by day 12 or by day 50 I finally feel it in my stomach, like, you know what? I am going to give it everything I got. And so when the person is saying in their mind, hey, I'm going to orally say this out loud, I forgive this person. I forgive myself. Over time, I wholeheartedly believe that that knot in their stomach that they were feeling when they first started that journey will slowly but surely not be there anymore. And I think it's still in our minds, but over time, that will transition to be more in our heart, and we'll feel that, I believe.
Good answer. Another tough question. If someone came to you and said that the individual that murdered your mother wanted to speak to you, would you?
Absolutely, I would. I've thought about this countless times. I've thought about what the conversation would be. I thought about what I could get out of it, what questions I would ask. I think, initially I would ask him, hey, if there would have been a second grade teacher, or if there would have been a best friend growing up that looked like me, that was an African American male, that was a black male, and or female, or whoever it was, and would that have changed your heart or no? I would ask him, hey, did you accomplish what you thought you would accomplish? I would ask him if he feels different now after the 8 years that it's been since it happened. I would ask him, but I would only ask these questions if it meant that I'm not hurting someone else's grieving process. Because, like I said, I'm not the only person that lost somebody. There are 8 other family members that lost, and then there's some survivors that are still living. And so out of just pure love for my church family, I would only ask him these questions if they're okay with it. And I think they'll be okay, because I think it potentially could stop something like this from happening in the future once we get that information. But those are some questions that I would ask. And he's like I've mentioned, he's never said sorry before. I think the closest thing he said to sorry was, they asked him in an interrogation, they asked him, hey, could you do it again? And he said, I don't know if I could do it again, because everybody was so kind to me that night. And when I hear that, it makes me think he was so convicted to do what he did, that even though some people were kind to him that evening, he still set out and did and murdered 9 people. So I would ask him what could change, what would have changed, or would it have been a best friend or girlfriend, or if his parents would have taught him differently, would he have thought differently? And once I get that information, I'm a person that says, when you get new information and you share that, you can change the world. And so I would honestly just share that as many times in as many places as I could, and hopefully that ripple effect would come into play.
It's a beautiful answer. Why do you think some people drown in hate?
I think it's an easier place to be, is sitting in hate and saying, woe is me, and saying, this happened to me, so I can never forgive that person. I think it's an easier place to be there. It's not a more fruitful place, but I think our emotions, when somebody hits us, what do you want to do? You immediately want to hit them back. Very few times you get hit and you just say, oh, I'm going to take it and smile. Absolutely not. You want to hit them right back where you got hit. And so I think it's easy to sit there and be angry. But in life, I've realized it's not about what happens to any of us. We can't control that, but we can control our response to it. And so for me, I've always focused on my response, and sitting in anger, all that's doing is killing 2 people's. His life is done, and my life would be done as well from sitting in that anger for the rest of my life.
And why do you think people sit in hate, like the person that murdered your mother? Like, why do you think people get consumed by hate and do hateful things, I guess, is the better way of asking that question?
Yeah, I think it's a multitude of things. I think number one, we act on what we're taught. So if we're taught it from a book, a movie, a TV show, a family member to hate asparagus, what are we going to do? We're going to hate asparagus, right? If we're taught to love uh, Cristiano Ronaldo our whole lives, right? We had posters in every single room growing up. What are you going to do? You're probably going to love Cristiano Ronaldo. And so for me, I think people are taught these terrible things, and some people's personality, once they learn about some small thing, it could be anything, they just fixate on it and they go so hard for it. And I do believe that there's evil in the world as well. I do believe there's evil in the world. If there's good in the world, that means there's got to be some evil. I believe in yin and yang. Like for good, there's bad, and for every bad, there's some good. And so, unfortunately, when you mix what you're taught with being fixated on it and evil being in this world, I think that is when terrible things happen to really good people out of that hatred.
And how do we combat that hate? Clearly, that's what you're doing. You're spreading messages of love and unity. But how do
Yeah,
but you're one person, right? How
I
does
am.
one combat the hate?
Yeah, I am one person, but I'd like to think if I speak to, you know, every year I speak to about 30,000 students and teachers, and it's easier to change a kid's heart when he's 11 years old than when he's 67 years old, right? And so I personally believe that teaching our educators to spread love throughout our schools in this country that I live in the US and every country around the world, is a great way to start. Is it going to solve every terrible thing from happening? No. But I bet there's some kids that are taught to hate me based on the color of my skin, and they're going to go to school. If their teacher tells them, hey, you need to love every single kid in this school, regardless of where they're from, because they didn't choose it, they didn't choose their first language, or they didn't choose their parents, or they didn't choose their accent or whatever it may be. When you teach that, then the kid's saying, you know what? I heard this at home, but Miss Johnson might be right. Chris didn't choose his first language, and neither did I. I didn't even choose my first name. Most of us don't. It's given to us. And we start thinking like that and teaching our friends and family this. This is this is the way that I think will combat that issue. Will it be the end all be all? Probably not. But will we make some progress? I'm hopeful that we will.
Is that how you instill love and unity into your two kids?
I do. I do. My son, I'm so big on language. I think language is a huge barrier for people. And in America, most people just know one language. All these other countries, people know multiple languages. And so for me, my sons, I send them to a bilingual school. They learn Spanish immersion. They learn Spanish from day one. They learn English. My wife's from Brazil, so they learn Portuguese. And then in the fourth grade, they learn Mandarin. And my hope is that uh, the barriers that I've seen go up when somebody doesn't speak the same language as you, it's astronomical. You just smile and you move some hand gestures and you try to be cordial. But if you can speak somebody's native tongue, whether you butcher it and it's terrible or not, there is a certain love that I believe is released in the world when somebody tries. And that's what I want my kids to do. I told my son all the time, I said, hey, buddy, some people have two mommies, some people have two daddies. Some people speak a different language, some people have long hair, some people have hearing aids, but we're going to love every single person. And he knows that. And that's what I'm teaching my kids. And I hope most parents are teaching their kids the same thing.
Love and unity. What a beautiful thing. Have you ever had a moment where you've been unable to forgive? And clearly, the fact that you've forgiven your mother's murderer is quite extraordinary. And it shows that you're someone that comes from the heart, because if you're not connected to your heart, I don't think it's possible to forgive, right? You can intellectually forgive. But have you ever had any moments in your life where you have been stuck in an inability to forgive?
I personally haven't. I do feel like it may be ordained on my life that I'm such a believer in forgiveness after losing my mom, because I would have never in a million years thought, if you'd have told me when I was 16, hey, you're going to forgive your mom's killer for murdering her because she's black, I would have said, get out of my face. There's no way in a million years that will happen. And once it happened, I know for a fact it was something that was almost out of this world that was instilled into my heart. And now I see the power in it. So I personally haven't been in that space. I mean, I'm human. So I do have times where it's like, man, this is I'm going up against a huge battle here, man. This is tough, right? And especially when it's election time and people are going at each other's throats left and right. But for me, what I kind of think is, okay, when I see somebody and they have a different perspective than me, I say to myself, they've got a story behind their stance. They've got a story behind that opinion, just like I do with mine. So if I'm a huge Neymar Jr. fan and somebody's a huge Cristiano Ronaldo fan, right? And I say, man, how does this guy love Ronaldo so much? My goodness, I just don't like him. Instead of saying I just could never be friends with this person, I think to myself, there's a reason why he loves this football player so much. There's a reason why. The same thing when somebody loves a certain political party, or they love, a weapon, or a certain type of defense that I don't personally like. There's a reason why they like that, and there's a reason why I don't. And I think this way, and I say I'm not going to judge this person based on where they stand, because I know there's a story behind it. And as adults, if we just start thinking that way, everybody has different experiences that lead them up to believe where they believe or what they believe. I think there'd be a lot more empathy in the world, which will in line help accomplish my mission of unity.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say that there is no doubt that your mother would be extraordinarily proud of you.
Thank you.
That this tragedy happened, and you have seemingly turned it into something so beautiful, when you could have turned it into so much hate. And I think that is a profoundly magnificent thing.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I do believe, man, when we have something to do with our pain, I feel like people are rejoicing in the afterlife when you do something, instead of just saying, hey, I lost my mom this way. I can sulk about it. I say, hey, I lost my mom this way. Let me be a part of the change. A really simple example is when somebody loses their family member to cancer or to breast cancer or whatever it may be. And they say, you know what, for the rest of my life, I'm going to make sure every single October I'm wearing pink. I'm raising money to fight cancer. I keep my mother's memory alive, or my family member's memory alive. And it kind of gives you a place to put that pain. And if I didn't do what I do right now, I don't know what I would do with the pain that I bear, because I definitely have a place and a mission for it.
You dedicated your life to changing the way people feel. And when we turn on the news, there are people dedicating their lives to making us feel bad, to making us feel like we're under attack, to making us feel that hate is okay. And you've dedicated your life to the total opposite thing. And that is a very profound way to be and to live. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we get to have this conversation. And I know at the beginning, they clearly hadn't told you that the whole point of the conversation was that I didn't know who I was talking to, right? Which is
maybe they did. I just might. I don't know if my assistant didn't send it to me or something.
Yeah, it's fine. But the purpose of that is so that I and you, my guest, gets to have a totally genuine, human-based conversation with no strings attached, and who knows where it goes. And most often it goes right into the center of the heart, which is what's happened right now. Right? Like, yeah. And in some ways we're doing the same thing. Like, you're spreading the message of love and unity, right? And the purpose of this podcast is on some level to do the same thing, to spread the message that irrespective of what I look like or what you look like or where you come from or where I come from, my religion, etc., at base, if we connect as two human beings, that is where the magic is. And that's what's happened in this conversation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the way that you set this podcast up. I don't know if it's your idea or whose idea, but that's a great idea. I've never seen it or heard it before, man. So this is really cool. I think for me, anytime you can just meet somebody and you listen to their heart and you listen to what makes them smile, what the pain that they've gone through, everything else is secondary, right? Everything else is secondary, but heart to heart is definitely something that I'm on board with. So I think you're doing something phenomenal with this podcast.
Thank you so much. And I'll finish with one little note. For me, there is always something that two people can have like a connection about. So let's go to the extremes. A Nazi and someone, let's say a Jew, right? You can think, oh, there's no connection. There's absolutely nothing in common. But then you can say to the Nazi, do you have a son? And the Nazi can say, yes, I do. And you can say to the Jew, do you have a son? And you can say, yes, I do. You then say to the Nazi, do you love your son? I love him more than I love anything. Say to the Jew, do you love your son? I love my son more than I've ever loved anything. So there you have two things, one thing that you have in common. You have in common that you have a love for your son. So start from there, right? For sure. There's always something in common. And that's beautiful. And, it's a beautiful thing when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, no, I remember hearing a story about a man who used to be racist, and somebody, a wise man, somebody he worked with, told him, he said, hey, when your kid was born and you were in the hospital and you're holding your kid for the first time and you're scared and you're nervous and you're holding the head up, you don't want to mess anything up. And he said, when you felt that feeling of just love and overwhelmingly, just all these emotions come over you, he said somebody on the opposite side of the world at the same exact time is feeling the same exact feeling. You'll never meet them. You have a totally different culture, but they're feeling the same feeling. And he said that is what human beings do. We love. And that always brings us together.
I like that. So beautiful. And I would say that forgiveness is just another word for love.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And it's not easy to get there, right? But it's just another word for love. And we all have that capacity to do that. For
sure. That's great, man. It's phenomenal.
So look, it was a real pleasure. Thank you very, very much. I mean, what a powerful story. And which part of the world do you live in?
I live in South Carolina in the US. That's where I live. Yeah. What about you?
I actually live in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you ever find yourself out here?
I do frequently. I'll be out there. I'll be in Malibu for Pepperdine next month. I'll speak there.
Amazing. I after the podcast, I'd love to give you my WhatsApp number. I would absolutely love it if you'd be willing to meet in Malibu. I love Malibu. And if there's any way that I can come and hear you speak, I won't say a word. I'll stay in the back. I'll just take it all in. It would be an honor, truly, if I could come and hear you speak.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Well, look, man, thank you very, very much. Keep doing what you're doing. And remember, forgiveness basically is love. And you are clearly a master at love, because to forgive the person who did what they did takes a courage beyond words.
Thank you, man. Talk soon.
Hello, everyone. It's Leon here, aka the Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.